Hello, good afternoon, class. So, today's topic of discussion would be the three interconnected topics: regulatory affairs in the emerging market, WHO pre-qualification, and global harmonization. Could you kindly confirm if I'm audible? Just give a thumbs up if I'm audible so we can continue with the class. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so today we will be covering regulatory affairs in the emerging market, WHO pre-qualification and global harmonization. This is going to be a very brief discussion, uh, so that we can move to our next important topic, which would be your regulatory affairs in drug development, where we will be talking about different kinds of applications that are being submitted to the regulatory bodies for approval of generic product, new drugs, biologicals, or vaccines, medical devices, etc. Okay, so moving on. First, we'll discuss about regulatory affairs in the emerging market. So, while we take up all these, topics one by one, I need to make sure that you understand the three main questions by the end of the session, which would be how regulatory frameworks in the emerging market function and their unique challenges. Second, you have to understand the role of WHO pre-qualification and how it impacts access to the medicines. And the third would be to describe efforts towards global harmonization and why they matter for public health and the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, so let's start with the emerging markets. Emerging markets include countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and parts of Eastern Europe. These region represents rapidly growing pharmaceutical markets due to increasing population, higher healthcare spending, and expanding access to the treatments. Okay. So when we talk about emerging markets, we are mostly talking about the Asia, Africa, countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and parts of Eastern Europe. We represent these regions because they are rapidly growing pharmaceutical markets. Why are they rapidly growing? Because the population is ever increasing. They have higher healthcare spending and the ever expanding access to the treatments. Okay. However, their regulatory frameworks are often still developing because these are, you can call them as non-regulated markets or emerging markets, likewise. So, their regulatory frameworks are often still developing, unlike the US FDA or European Medicine Agency. They lack resources, experience, or harmonized rules. Okay. So the evolving regulatory systems are your CDSCO. CDSCO is Indian regulatory body, and Visa is your Brazil regulatory body, and SAFRA is for South. These regulatory system mainly rely on the ICH guidelines, the FDA guidelines, and EMA guidelines. Okay, these are reliant on these guidelines because when you talk about all these emerging countries, they have inconsistent requirements across the different countries. uh, they vary from region to region. Some region might require translation into the local language. Some requires local clinical trials to be performed. For example, in India, CDSCO requires the local clinical trials to be performed in order for a drug to be approved and marketed in the country. Okay. But if this is harmonized, then once a drug is approved by US FDA, it can easily be marketed here in India, and there won't be any need to do a local clinical trial in order to prove a point that yes, the product is clinically efficient and safe and can be marketed. This will prevent, the duplication of the data and the time that has been taken to, perform a second round of clinical trials locally. So because these are evolving regulatory system, there needs to be a lot of requirements that needs to be fulfilled, where because of which the WHO PQ and ICH has come into action to harmonize regulations across these emerging markets as well. Okay, so When we talk about emerging market, they face a lot of challenges while registering products in emerging market, which includes your inconsistent regulations, different dossier formats. There are different review timelines and submission rules in different countries of the emerging market. Then local requirements, as we discussed, like I said, Indian CITESCO requires your local clinical trials. Then they have limited resources, fewer reviewers are there, uh, and inspectors as compared to US FDA, which leads to slower approval rates. Apart from all these inconsistent regulations, local requirements, and limited resources, there's also political or economic instability, which can lead, which can delay approvals or affect supplies if they are changed overnight. Okay, so the main challenges that the emerging market face are the inconsistent regulations, local requirements, limited resources, and political and economic instability. But where there are challenges, there are also opportunities. So many agencies offer fast track approvals for essential drugs and vaccines. Some rely on the decisions from mature regulators like EMA, FDA, or WHO to make approval faster. Also, in the emerging markets, they attract emerging markets are itself attractive locations for clinical trials with large treatment naive populations and lower cost. So, growth of clinical trials in emerging regions is a very good opportunities for the new drugs. So that's about what happens in the regulatory markets in the emerging regulatory affairs in the emerging market. So to address this situation, we have now WHO pre-qualification. The pre-qualification process follows four main steps. Before we jump to the four main steps, the purpose of WHO PQ is to ensure medicine, vaccine, diagnostics meet global quality standards, support support procurement by UNICEF, Gavi, and Global Fund, and the scope is just not limited to medicines, it's also applicable to vaccines, etc. Okay, so now we will talk about the pre-qualification process. The pre-qualification process consists of four major steps. The first is your dossier submission, then is your technical assessment, third comes your GMP inspection, and the fourth is WHO listing for global procurement. So in dossier submission, the manufacturer submits technical documentation. How a document or dossier is submitted, we will talk about that common technical documentation, which is uh, applied to, by over more than 100 countries in our next session after we've covered the WHO global harmonization as well. So the first step in pre-qualification process is your dossier submission, where a manufacturer submits a technical documentation. Then a technical assessment is conducted where WHO experts evaluate data against ICH, EMA, and FDA standards. Then comes your GMP inspection, where facilities are inspected for compliance. And last is your listing, where once approved products are added to WHO PQ list for global procurement. For example, in 2021, WHO pre-qualified the malarial vaccine RTS-AS01 OI, which is also referred to as Mosquirix. This enabled Gavi and UNICEF to purchase the malaria vaccine for African countries as well. So if a drug is listed in your WHO PQ listing, then UNICEF, Gavi, global funds can procure that medicine for the respective emerging markets as well. So after emerging market, we had WHO PQ, and lastly, we have global harmonization. So global harmonization is a process of aligning regulatory requirements across countries to reduce duplication and speed up access. Okay. And why is it important? For faster patient access to medicine, to avoid duplication of dossiers and trials, and build regulatory capacity in small, non-regulated areas. Okay, and the challenges that are being faced when talking about global harmonization are different legal frameworks across nations, resource gaps between mature and emerging agencies, and slow adoption of harmonized guidelines. You cannot expect a country to adapt to a guideline overnight. Okay, it takes a lot of time for them to come around to make peace with the legal frameworks that they have in their nation and the guidelines that have been laid by ICH, EMA, or FDA to, overcome the gaps between the mature and emerging agencies. So it's a slow process, the adoption of ICH guidelines, EMA guidelines, or FDA guidelines in order for harmonization. So take for example, there's Asian CTD. When we will talk about CTD, you'll have a better understanding of what CTD exactly is. But here, just for a reference, there's Asian CTD, which when submitted, then it's if a manufacturer is submitting an Asian CTD, then it allows that company to use one dossier format across 10 Southeast Asian countries, not states, sorry. Then there's Africa's Reliance model, which lets countries like Ghana and Tanzania approve HIV generic based on WHO PQ or EMA approvals without repeating the review. Okay. Key organizations that are responsible for harmonization are your ICH, International Council for Harmonization, which sets global guidelines for quality, safety, efficacy, dossiers, and dossier standards. I'll show you how what a ICH guideline looks like after this. Apart from ICH, there are regional initiatives like again Asian CTD, there's Africa, and there's PANDRAF from Latin America. So to conclude this WHO PQ emerging market and global harmonization will we can easily say that emerging markets are full of high potential but requires navigating diverse and evolving regulations. Therefore, WHO PQ comes in action, which acts as a global quality seal, ensuring procurement of safe and effective products. When WHO PQ After WPQ, there's harmonization, global harmonization, which improves efficiency and patient access, but still face adoption challenges. So the three elements are interconnected. Harmonization strengthens emerging market, and WPQ supports both harmonization and local regulatory reliance. Okay, so this is about emerging markets, WPQ, and global harmonization. I'll quickly show you what a ICH guideline looks like, and then we will move to regulatory affairs and drug development. So if you have any questions regarding the emerging market, who pre-qualification or global harmonization, uh, drop the question in the chat box so we can address them. And meanwhile, I'll just show you what an ICH guideline looks like, so you have a better understanding of what the guidelines are. Also, when we will talk about ICH guidelines, I would request you all to, go through ICH M4Q R1 guidelines in order to understand the CTD modules that we are going to discuss in the later section, in the later sessions. We'll take up each module 1 to module 5, and talk about the elements that are in respective modules. So, for better understanding of those topics, I would request you all to go through ICH M4Q R1 guidelines. These guidelines are available on ICH website. I'll just show you the guidelines. Okay, I'm so sorry. I was saying that before we move to our next session of CTD modules, I would request all of you to, go through this once again. Go through this once, the ICH M4Q R1 guideline, in order to understand what the CTD modules, what are the sections in the CTD module, what we will be discussing. So for you to get a head start, I would request you all go through this guideline. You can easily find the guideline here on M4Q R1 guideline. The PDF is available online. And if nothing more, you can just, try to memorize the table of content, each section and their subsections, so that when we take up each section individually, you know what we are talking about and the subject is not entirely new to you. Okay? So if you have any questions related to emerging markets, WHO PQ or global harmonization, you can ask them in the chat box and then we'll move towards our next slide. Okay, so now we will talk about introduction to regulatory affairs. It's majorly four topics that make regulatory affairs, which is your compliance, safety, approval, and communication. When we talk about compliance, so regulatory affair professionals navigate complex regulatory requirements across different countries, such as FDA and EMA, ensuring adherence to all laws and guidelines. Then is your safety, where professionals ensure patient safety by overseeing clinical trial protocols, conducting thorough post-market surveillance to monitor the effects of drugs once they are on the market. Then the approval, regulatory professional assist with regulatory submissions, including documentation and data preparation, and ensure timely approvals from regulatory bodies to facilitate market access. And then as your communication, the most important part of regulatory affairs is communication, because you need to coordinate effectively between pharmaceutical company and regulatory agencies, facilitating clear communications to streamline the approval process and address any concern. Moving on to the introduction of drug development. So, we'll talk about an overview of the drug development process, its importance, and the objective behind each phase. There's discovery, which is the initial phase where potential drug candidates are identified through research and screening. Then comes your preclinical testing, where testing drug candidates in labs and animal studies to assess safety and biological activity. Once that is done, we move to clinical trials, which is conducting tests on human subjects to evaluate safety, doses, if efficacy, and side effects. After a clinical trial is done, there's a regulatory review where data has been submitted to the regulatory body for approval to ensure compliance with safety and efficacy standards. And last is your post-marketing surveillance, where drug is being monitored for its performance in the market to identify any long-term effects or issues. Okay, so phase one is your preclinical research. The primary goal of preclinical research is to evaluate the safety of a new drug and determine its dosage range, ensuring it is safe for human trials. Before human testing, a drug undergoes extensive laboratory research, including both in vitro and in vivo animal tests, studies aimed at understanding various pharmacological aspects. These studies primarily focus on identifying the pharmacokinetics of the drug, assessing its toxicity at various dosage, and investigating its mechanism of action along with potential therapeutic effects. If preclinical studies indicate safety and efficacy, an investigational new drug application, which application an investigational new drug application is submitted to regulatory agencies like the FDA or EMA for approval to begin clinical trials. Once your drug has passed your preclinical studies, an application called as investigational new drug application is submitted to regulatory agencies like FDA or EMA. The first application is your investigational new drug application. The IND application contains comprehensive information about the drug, including preclinical data, proposed clinical trial design, and detailed drug information necessary for regulatory review. For instance, if a pharmaceutical company develops a new painkiller that demonstrates significant anti-inflammatory effects in animal models without serious side effects, it can proceed to submit an IND for human trials. Next is your clinical trials or small scale trials. So, okay. So next is your clinical trials, small scale trials, which will talk about evaluating efficacy and assessing safety in small groups of human patients, specifically targeting those with the condition the drug is meant to treat. So if we're talking about a painkiller, then we will target the patients who requires pain medications. Okay. So that's the objective. Then a trial design is made where phase 2 trials are randomized controlled studies with 100 to 300 participants. The primary goal is to assess the drug's efficacy, while secondary goals include monitoring side effect and exploring optimal dosing. These trials can last from several months to years, depending on the drug's nature and the condition being treated, ensuring thorough evaluation. Including types of trials include dose ranging studies to determine effective doses with minimal side effects and efficacy studies to confirm drugs effectiveness for the targeted disease or condition. Companies must provide periodic updates to regulatory agencies, including interim results and safety findings. IND amendments may be necessary to adjust trial design or dosing schedules based on these findings. For example, a cancer drug showing positive preclinical result is tested on actual patients in phase 2 to evaluate its effectiveness in shrinking tumors and to assess side effects. If there are any changes in the results or there are any amendments that needs to be made, then the INDA is amended accordingly, and those amendments are being submitted to the FDA and EMA for their recognition. Okay. The third phase is your large scale clinical trial, which confirms efficacy and safety of new drug in diverse patient population. The primary goal is to confirm the drug's efficacy, monitor side effects, and compare it against standard treatments or placebos to establish its value. Phase 3 trial recruits large group of patients across multiple sites, ensuring a comprehensive evaluation of the drug safety and effectiveness in various demographics. Focus is placed on long-term clinical outcomes such as survival rates, disease progressions, which are crucial for determining the drug's real-world impact. These trials often span several years, influenced by disease being studied and the complexity of trial protocols, ensuring thorough data collection. Once a clinical trial is approved, a new drug application must be submitted to regulatory agencies like the FDA or EMA, including comprehensive results from all the 3 trials to demonstrate drug safety and efficacy. Okay, so after a preclinical trial is done, we are submitting an INDA application, which is your investigational new drug application, which provides you gateway to perform clinical trials. Once your clinical trials are once you have enough data from clinical trials ensuring that the drug is safe and effective, you can then file a new drug application to the FDA or EMA to get the marketing authorization of the same drug. For instance, a hypertension drug that shows promise in phase 2 trial is evaluated in phase 3 with thousands of patients to confirm its effectiveness and safety compared to existing treatment. Okay. So take for example, you've submitted your NDA application, you get the marketing authorization from the FDA. Then what? Then comes your post-marketing surveillance. The objective of post-marketing surveillance is to monitor long-term effects and drug safety after approval. Okay, any rare side effects or overall effectiveness of a drug after it has been approved for public use needs to be monitored. This involves observational and registry studies where the drug is administered in general population, gathering critical data on its long-term safety and efficacy. Real-world monitoring where the PV professionals are tracking the drugs used in everyday settings, identifying any adverse event that may not have been evident during earlier clinical trials. Manufacturers must submit, uh, periodic safety update reports and ensure adverse event reporting by healthcare providers and patients to regulatory agencies. If a PSUR or any adverse event hasn't been reported and is seen, then the drug might be on the verge of a recall, or the marketing authorization uh, can be, uh, revoked. So, yeah, submitting a PSUR and ensuring adverse event reporting is very crucial to make sure that the drug doesn't show any effect and is in the market for a longer period of time. Then, when we talk about adverse event reporting, healthcare providers and patients are required to report side effects, which are analyzed to detect previously unknown safety issues. Example can be following the approval of vaccine for a viral disease. Phase 4 trial continues to monitor its safety profile, focusing on tracking rare side effects, evaluating long-term effectiveness. So in clinical trial, you cannot always evaluate the long-term effectiveness. Only after the drug has been, released into the market, once the patient starts taking it for a longer period of time, then only we can actually address the long-term effectiveness of the drug and understand if there are any adverse effects or any side effects that are crucial to be reported in the PSUs, and if any changes needs to be made in the composition or how the drug is made to prevent those side effects. Okay, so this is your summary of drug development phases. Just go through it once. These are your challenges in drug development. High failure rates are seen, regulatory hurdles are seen. There's a financial cost that is involved. Many drug experience failure during clinical trials due to safety concern, lack of efficacy, or unexpected side effects, leading to a significant waste of resource. Then navigating the approval process from regulatory bodies is often complex and time consuming, requiring extensive documentation and compliance with stringent guidelines. And the overall cost of drug development can reach billions, and company must financially prepare for the possibility of late stage failure impacting their overall profitability. Okay, so how a regulatory professional can keep an oversight in drug development. So, regulatory oversight is essential to safeguard the health of trial participants and maintain public trust in drug development process. Key regulatory agencies include US FDA and EMA, which play pivotal roles in ensuring compliance. Regulatory agencies monitor the entire drug development process from preclinical studies through to clinical trials, ensuring adherence to safety protocols. Accurate and timely submission of documentation is mandated, including interim results, safety finding, and any necessary amendments to the trial designs of the protocols. The drug development process typically spans over a decade, often exceeding 10 years from discovery to the market. So, yes, it's a long process. It's time consuming, it's financially, it's not very cost effective. So, we need to plan our drug development accordingly. So that is about drug development phases and challenges in drug development, and how a regulatory person overlooks the entire process and makes sure that the process is compliant and the drug is safe and effective. If you have any questions regarding the drug development process, feel free to ask in the comment section, and then we'll move to clinical trial regulations and submission requirements. See, we've already talked about clinical trials. These are just This is just a more detailed explanation of all the phases. The phase one, again, the primary aim is to assess safety side, identify side effects, and determine optimal dosage in controlled group of 20 to 100 healthy volunteers or patient. Regulatory requirement of phase one needs to be adherence to strict regulatory guidelines for trial approval and conduct. The INDA application that is being submitted should include comprehensive preclinical data, a detailed clinical trial protocol, and informed consent documents to ensure participant safety and ethical standards. What three things are required? A comprehensive preclinical data, a detailed clinical trial protocol, and informed consent documents. Okay, GCP guideline must be followed to ensure the ethical code of trial protecting the rights and well-being of the patients. An example would be a pharmaceutical company submitting an IND to the FDA to initiate a phase 1 trial for a new painkiller, thereby advancing drug development. Phase 2 is your efficacy and side effects. It's conducted on over 100 to 300 patients. For instance, a cancer drug in phase 2 may submit an interim report to the FDA showcasing initial efficacy results observed in the treated patients and therefore move to phase 3 confirming efficacy and monitoring adverse reaction. Okay, so focus of phase 3 is again to confirm the drug's effectiveness in larger and more diverse population. To move forward, sponsor must submit a new drug application or biologicals license application to regulatory authorities, which rigorously assess the submitted data. A detailed statistical analysis is mandatory to demonstrate that the drug shows significant differences in effectiveness compared to the placebo or standard treatment, proving its therapeutic value. For example, a cardiovascular drug in phase 3 might prepare an NDA submission based on data that indicates substantial improvements in patient outcome, showcasing the potential benefits. Phase 4 is again your post-marketing surveillance. We've already discussed this. This is your key submission requirements for each phase. Related to clinical trials, pop them in the chat box. If not, we will move to the next slide in a minute. Please go through the key submission requirements for each phase so you have understanding of what we've discussed so far. These are your phase 2 and phase 3 submission requirements. Just go through these. I have compiled it all for you for an overview. If you have any questions while reading the slides, just ask them in the chat box so that we can always take those questions up again later. Go through the phase or submission requirements as well. Okay. Now comes the role of regulatory affairs in clinical trials. So, first thing, in preclinical and clinical trial protocol review, regulatory affair professional ensures that preclinical data such as animal studies adequately supports the initiation of clinical trials and that the trial protocol adheres to established regulatory standards. Second is the safety assessment. Prior to entering phase 1 clinical trial, regulatory affair professional meticulously review animal toxicology data to ensure all safety concerns are thoroughly addressed, thereby mitigating risk for human participants. And the third is your regulatory compliance. Regulatory affairs play a critical role in ensuring that all critical trials, clinical trial activities comply with guidelines set forth by regulatory agencies, which is essential for the approval and success of new therapies. Okay. Then is your regulatory document submission and compliance. Regulatory affair professional meticulously prepare and submit critical documents like IND, NDA, BLA to ensure compliance with regulatory standard. All the regulatory body, EMA, FDA have different requirements. So we have to compile the documents as per the requirements of the regulatory body and submit it to them. During phase 2 clinical trials, regulatory professional plays a vital role in ensuring timely submissions of the IND amendments to the FDA reflecting any update in the trial design. Regulatory affair professional also ensures that the clinical trials are conducted according to the GCP and GMP and other relevant guidelines and adherence to GMP standards for a phase 3 trial of biologic. Regulatory affair professional ensures a strict adherence to GMP standards throughout the manufacturing process, safeguarding the product quality. This is your real world example of clinical trial phases. Just go through them once for a better understanding. See, for example, a pharmaceutical company submits an INDA to test a new cancer treatment safety in healthy volunteers, making the first human trial. Detailed safety data from animal studies is required. A comprehensive study protocol is required, and an informed consent forms are essential for phase 1. Then take for example, there's a new diabetes medication in phase 3. Following successful phase 2 trial, a company prepares an NDA to gain FDA approval for its diabetes medication, focusing on efficacy. So phase 3 submission will include results of the trial, detailed statistical analysis, proposed labeling, and manufacturing information. And third example would be a vaccine development. Post approval, a vaccine manufacturer conducts phase 4 trials for ongoing monitoring of adverse reactions and long-term safety. The submission would require manufacturer to provide periodic safety update report and detailed adverse event reports. Okay, so that is it about clinical trials. I've given you a brief of what INDA application does, what NDA, BLA are. We will talk about INDA process specifically here in the next slide. So just go through the examples once again, and then we'll move to IND application. And from the next class, we will start with common technical document, module 1 to module 5. We will understand how documents are being submitted. I'll give you real-time example of how we are submitting a document, and we'll take everything one by one. Okay, so do you think we should start with investigational new drug process today here in this class, or we should take it up in the next class so that we can, talk about IND application as well as the common technical document parallelly, or we should just talk about IND application process here and now and then CTD in the next session? If you want to discuss INDA today itself, please give a thumbs up so that I can start with INDA. And if you want that we discuss INDA along with the CTD application in the next class, then also just type it in the chat box so I know what majority of the students need today, because I feel it's a lot what we've discussed today in the class. So for you to process all of it, to understand what INDA is, what CTD would be, it might take a lot of time. So just give a thumbs up if you want to discuss INDA today. Okay, I see one student has asked to discuss it in the next class, which I feel is okay because it's a very extensive topic to be discussed. So today you go back, you run through all the WHO pre-qualification processes, WHO global harmonization, read about the ICH guidelines, and learn more about emerging markets, read about the SAFRA guidelines, read about CITESCO guidelines, how they are different from FDA guidelines. Then you will understand the difference between what an emerging market regulatory guidelines are and how they're different from the one that are of stringent regulatory market like FDA and EMA. Okay, so I would request all of you to go and read about the regulatory guidelines, equip yourself with the regulatory knowledge and understand the regulatory framework of different bodies. Because when we'll talk about IND applications, NDA applications, all these applications are a little bit different for different regulatory bodies. So if you have an understanding of what the regulatory framework is of different regulatory bodies, you will have a better understanding of what we are going to discuss in the next class. So I will wrap up this class here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We'll take up the INDA application in next class along with CTD module. So if you have any questions, okay. Even though you don't have questions right now, if you read through your guidelines and everything, and if you come across any questions that I can address, please feel free to ask me in the next class. We'll wrap up this session here and now. Thank you so much.